Hello, my sewing friends. Let's make a teardrop pocket.
Woohoo!
I'm Jen and this is my sewing room, and I've been making lots of pockets lately. And I thought I would show you how to make a child's elastic teardrop pocket. Looks a little bit like this. This is a little girl's dress that I made for Project Dress a Girl. I've been doing a lot of that. And this is just a little teardrop pocket. Now I've embellished mine with a little bow here, but let me show you. It looks a little like this. It's got elastic at the top and it's just kind of in the shape of a little teardrop. Let me show you how to make this. Okay, first thing we're gonna need is a pattern and the instruction sheet, and these are linked in the description box, and that link will take you to a downloadable PDF of this and this. So you need a pattern, and then you need your fabric, and then you also need some elastic. Now on the instruction sheet it says you will need a 3-inch piece of 3/8 or 1/4 inch elastic. I would recommend the 3/8. You are going to use a 3-inch piece, but if you want to cut it a little bit longer, like 4 inches, and then trim it, that would work too. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Here's my elastic, and I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go, right about there. And I'm just going to cut that. Now I'm going to set that aside for later. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out my pattern. So one thing I want to point out is that this pattern has notches on either side of kind of about 1 inch from the top. It also has 2 notches here at the bottom, and you'll leave that opening in order to turn it right side out. But these 2 notches are kind of important. So this line isn't nearly as much important as these notches. So keep that in mind. So I'm just going to cut this out. So there's my pattern. Now, the first thing we're going to do is put right sides together. And then we are going to stitch right across the top here. So we're going to stitch this at a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And there we go. I've got this stitched at 3/8 of an inch. And first thing I'm going to do here is go in, and I am going to mark where my notches are. Like right here, and I'm just going to mark like right there. Now, if you snip your notches, you're in good shape. You're way ahead of the game. And then I'm going to trim them off. I just need to know where they are. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go about 3/8 of an inch in on either side, and I'm going to mark where that is. 1, 2, 3, about right there. And 1, 2, 3, about right here. And I'm just going to, I don't know what that is. And I'm just going to clip it right there at the notch into where that 3/8 of an inch mark is, because that's my seam line. So I'm just clipping it right there. And now I have 2 clips here, 2 clips here. Now what I'm going to do is go over to the ironing board, and I'm going to press this, because that's what you do. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to fold out, well, I'm going to press this open. And after I press this open, then I'm going to take these little pieces at the end where I clipped, and I'm going to take that seam allowance that's between the 2 clips, and I'm going to fold it up. So it looks like that, and like this. And then what you can do then is, if you are familiar and have some steam a seam or some Wonder Under or Stitch Witchery or some sort of a fusible web, you can fuse these up so they'll stay there. And the idea here is that you want these not just to be pressed up, but you want them to be secured. So if you have a fusible web that you can use, you can do that and do it that way. But if you don't have that or aren't familiar with that, then you can just baste this down. So what I'm going to do is go over, and again, I'm going to, first of all, press my seam to set it, open this out, press my seam open, press my ends up towards the seam, and I'm going to fuse one, and then I'm going to baste the other one just so you can see both ways. Okay, here is my pocket. I've pressed open my seam and I've pressed up my two end seam allowances where we clipped. And this one I've fused with Steam-A-Seam, and then this one I've just basted, which basically just means I've sewn across it using the longest stitch length on my machine. And that's going to come out later. So now what I'm going to do is turn this and match right sides together, match those notches down here, and then I'm going to match up these two ends. And you can see when I bring these together, it forms an opening here, and that's going to be our casing later on. So I'm going to pin these, and you really don't have to fight with this seam here because you don't have to deal with it. I mean, you're going to deal with this and not this. And it can lay any way it likes. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over and stitch this so that we can turn it inside out, right side out. So I'm just putting a few pins in here and there. You don't have to pin if you're pretty confident. But now what I need to do is start here at the notches at the bottom. And remember, this is an opening. So we're not going to stitch between the notches. We're going to go from the notch up, and we're going to go right to this edge where the casing starts, where the that opening is, and we're just going to stop. So we just want to sew this down to the notches, or from the notches up. And there is my pocket stitched. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim off these notches because I don't need them. And I'm going to clip right up to the edge of my stitching here where this opening is, and that will make it easy for me to turn. And I think I'm just going to clip a little tiny clip right here, just like halfway into the seam allowance, just to make it easy for me to turn these edges up, where, you know, that's because it's on a curve. I think it might make it a little bit easier. So we're going to press these edges up when we go to press this. But before we press, we need to trim the seam and clip the curves. So on this side, I'm going to clip curves because I never do that. And I want to show you that if you don't have pinking shears, that's what you do. Do this about 3/4 of an inch to an inch apart, and you just kind of clip right around that curve. You clip up to the stitching line, but not through it. And then you can go back after that and just trim this to between 1/4 and 1/8 of an inch. Not very much. If you don't want to trim it at all, you don't have to, but I like to just get it pretty close in there. There, I think that's a little wide there at the end. Trim that off. And on the other side, I'm going to show you that I always trim with my pinking shears. And I say this all the time, but I like them because I can trim, and the zigzag part of the pinking shear does the clipping essentially for me. So I don't need to clip curves when I've got this zigzag edge. So now I'm going to go over to the iron, and I'm going to press this just to set the seam. Don't worry about any of that. You can do that when we turn it inside out and press it again. But I'm also going to press up these little seam allowances here at the bottom where I turned it. And in pressing those up before I turn it, then I'm going to get a really nice finished edge. after I turn it. So I'm gonna go press. And here's my pocket all pressed. I'll tell you, that little snip right there does make a difference in this curve. It really does. So now I'm going to turn this inside out, right side out. And I'm going to use my chopstick, and I'll show you why in just a second. Once you get to this point, I like to go in and poke out my corners, which, look there, I've got an opening. And I like to take my chopstick and just push that seam out. And it gives me a nice curve. See how great that curve is? Nice. Okay, now I'm going to go over and I'm going to press this because I'm a pressaholic. Okay, there's my pressed pocket. It looks a little wonky, doesn't it? It's fine. It's going to gather up here anyway, so it'll be okay. But I know I press constantly, and I want you to know that I've been sewing since I was a little kid, and I didn't ever learn to press things until much later in my sewing life, and I cannot believe what a difference it makes. And that's why I am constantly saying press, press, press after every little thing. So you don't have to, but it does give you a much nicer result. Okay, now what we're going to do is go over and we're going to stitch a casing, and we're going to start at the edge of this opening right there. See right there? And we're going to stitch down to the other edge of the opening, and we're going to go at a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance right along this folded edge right there, and that's going to form our casing for the elastic. Okay, there's my casing stitched at 5/8 of an inch away, and I have my opening here and I have my opening here, and those are finished the way we did it. And now what I am going to do is put my elastic in. There are all kinds of ways that you can do your elastic. You can use a safety pin, you can use a loop turner just by putting it through and grabbing. I'm going to use my hemostats. Now I love these things for a short casing like this. They're not great for a big long casing because you have to essentially gather all of this up onto here, and a lot of fabric won't fit. But I like them because you can snap them and hold them shut, and they're like tweezers. Actually, these are the things that doctors will use to do stitches. They'll put the needle here and then they just go like that and they stitch skin. Yikes. Much rather use them for fabric. So I'm just going to slide that through there and open this as much as I can, just enough. There's just enough room there for me to slide that little piece of elastic in and grab onto it, and I'm going to lock that so it doesn't let go, and I'm going to slide it in just to the edge. You don't want it to stick out unless you've cut it longer. And I did cut it longer, didn't I? So I guess I want it to stick out about 1/2 inch. There we go. And I'm going to just secure it with a pin, and then I'm going to pull it the rest of the way through, just gathering as I go, and let it, man, I'm glad I remembered that. There's my 1/2 inch, and I'm going to secure that with a pin. And now I've got my elastic. Oh, and look, we've got a little teardrop. Okay, now what I'm going to do is go over and I'm going to stitch across the ends here and secure that elastic. And you want to stitch it just close to the edge, as close as you can get, really. A scant 1/8 of an inch maybe. You can stitch it further in if you want to. If you do, then you'll have more room to get in there and trim that elastic, but I think it's fine if you just go right up to the edge, as close as you can get. And there's my pocket, all stitched. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to trim off these ends, and I'm just going to trim them even. I don't think they're going to stick out very much. If you want to get in there with a pair of smaller scissors and just kind of trim them inside, that opening, you can do that. And you can tell I just went about 1/8 of an inch away. And now it's time to go in and remove that basting stitching, if you can find it. I think mine's right over here. I think that's what that is. So you can just go in and remove that. And if you've stitched right over it, it probably isn't going to matter, but yeah, there we go. And now you're ready to go lay it down and put it on your dress. So you can make these go up a little bit. You can pull them down like this and then just spread your pocket out. You should be able to flatten it out and stitch all the way around it. If you want to put a bow here, you can do that. You can just do, use your imagination, and you can just do all kinds of things. This opening down here is going to get sewn shut when you come around. I often will do 1/8 of an inch line of stitching to attach it to the dress, or I'll do 1/4 of an inch, or I'll do both, 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch. Try and reinforce this upper edge when you do sew your pockets, and that's all there is to it. And there you go. Not difficult at all. A few extra steps than a regular pocket, but it turns out so cute. And you can trim this out any way you like. You can put piping or rickrack or ribbon or bias around the edges. Like you saw on this one, I put little bows at the top, which make them kind of cute and special. You can make your pocket out of a different fabric. You can just do all kinds of things. Use your imagination. So that's how you do it. And let me leave you with one of my favorite scriptures, which is, do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. That's from the book of Micah. I'll leave you with that for now. Please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.